It all happened last month. I was a taxi driver in the city, something I'd done for years. I planned to leave it behind and start fresh. But I wanted to finish my last month, honor the friendships I'd made along the way. Little did I know what I was walking into. At first, it felt like just another night. I pulled up downtown. The neon lights buzzed against the fog. It was like the city had its own rhythm, and I was part of it. But that night, the fog was thick. It felt heavy, like something was lurking. Then she appeared. A woman stumbled into my cab, sunglasses on despite the dark. Her clothes were torn, and I had to shake the thought not to judge her. "Where to?" I asked. Silence met my question. I glanced in the rearview mirror, but she wouldn't look at me. I shrugged it off, thinking she was just tired. But as the month dragged on, things got weird. I picked up an old man, his eyes wide and glassy. He muttered something I couldn't catch. It sounded strange, almost like he was speaking in tongues. I felt uneasy, but drove him to his destination. He just stared out the window the entire ride. Then there was the child, about 8 years old. He climbed into my back seat one night, looking nervous. "I can see them," he said, peering out the window. "See who?" I asked. He just grinned, and that grin sent chills through me. I almost wanted to laugh, but didn't. The days blurred. I noticed shadowy figures near my favorite pickup spot. They blended into the darkness. I felt their eyes on me as I drove away with my next passenger. They looked just as scared as I felt. Did they see what I saw? I never asked. With every ride, the unease deepened. I couldn't forget the woman in sunglasses. What was she running from? One night, I saw the old man again on the corner. My heart raced. I took off fast, feeling like I was being followed. By the end of that month, I was on edge. Every ride felt wrong. I thought maybe the city was playing tricks on my mind. Each person I picked up made me question reality. I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked beneath the surface, waiting. Then came that night, the night things escalated. I turned a corner, and a whisper cut through the fog. "Why are you here?" The words felt like ice in my veins. I looked around. No one was there. Just the shadows and the fog. I felt sick. I wanted to scream, but couldn't. I drove faster, my hands gripping the wheel. I kept checking the back seat, half expecting someone to be sitting there. Now, as I sit here thinking back, I still wonder about those passengers. The woman, the old man, the child, were they real? Or just figments of my imagination? I never figured it out. I just packed my bags and left, leaving that mystery behind. The following week, I tried to keep a low profile. I didn't want any more strange encounters. But the city had other plans. It felt like the air had thickened, and every turn I took felt wrong. My first few customers were harmless, just typical drunks headed home, but the sense of dread weighed heavier every hour I drove. Then came that late Friday night. I was parked by the usual bar, waiting for my next fare. That's when I noticed her again, the woman in the sunglasses. She was leaning against the wall, looking lost. Something about her pulled me in, like a moth to a flame. I couldn't help myself. I rolled down the window. "Need a ride?" I called out. She jumped, and for a split second, I thought I saw fear in her eyes. But then she approached slowly, still hiding behind those dark glasses. As she opened the door, I could smell something off, like burnt rubber mixed with sweat. I swallowed hard. "Where to?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just drive," she said, her voice low and shaky. I nodded and pulled away from the curb. The fog had rolled in thicker now, and the only light came from the street lamps, casting eerie shadows. I took the long way, thinking maybe she needed to talk, but she just stared ahead, her silence suffocating the space between us. "Are you okay?" I finally asked, breaking the tension. She turned her head slightly, her sunglasses hiding her expression. "Just keep driving. I'll tell you when to stop." A chill ran down my spine. I felt uneasy. After a few blocks, though, I could see the tremor in her hands. "You shouldn't be out here," I said, but she didn't respond. Ahead, I spotted a figure under a streetlight. It was the old man, the same one from my earlier rides. He stood there, staring directly at us. I felt my heart pound in my chest. "Please, don't stop," the woman whispered, her voice almost breaking. But it was too late. My foot instinctively pressed the brake. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her eyes wide now, pleading. Before I could answer, the old man approached the passenger side. The woman pressed back into her seat. I felt stuck between fear and the urge to help. "Listen to her," he shouted, less frantic than before, but more desperate. "You need to get away." "What?" I asked, confusion overtaking me. "Drive, there's no time," he urged, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Panic bubbled in my stomach. I turned back to the woman. Her eyes widened further. "Go!" I slammed on the gas. The tires screeched. I could see the old man fading into the fog in the rearview mirror, his outline swallowed by darkness. I didn't dare look back again. For miles, silence ruled the cab, but I could feel her eyes laser-focused, filled with something deep, fear, anger, maybe even desperation. I could sense the weight of whatever had just happened hanging heavy in the air. "Stop," she finally said. I slowed, pulling over to the side of the road. It was a dark place, away from the neon lights, just more fog and looming shadows. "Now, tell me what's going on," I demanded, my voice shaking. But before she could answer, a hand tapped on my window. I turned, and my heart dropped. Another figure stood there, shrouded in darkness, its face unreadable. And just like that, the hooded silhouette whispered, "You shouldn't have driven away from him." My instincts kicked in. I slammed the car into reverse, ready to get out of there, but the woman shot forward, grabbing my arm. "No, don't move." I froze, the touch of her finger sending a shock through me. The hooded figure remained, silent and still. It felt like all the air had left the cab. Outside, the fog curled around us, thickening. The world shrank to just the three of us and the car. "What do you want?" I shouted at the figure, desperation making my voice sharper than I intended. The hooded figure took a step closer, and my pulse raced. "You don't understand," it said, voice calm and chilling, "what you've just invited into your life." The woman released my arm, her hands shaking. "You have to trust me," she whispered, but her eyes flitted to the figure. "We can't stay here." I glanced at the rearview mirror. The fog was rolling in so thick I couldn't see anything beyond the window. The sensation of being watched gnawed at my skin. "All you have to do is listen," the figure continued. "You made a choice to drive away. That choice has consequences." A part of me wanted to bolt, but I gripped the steering wheel tighter, a knot of fear and confusion tightening in my chest. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice firm. The figure moved closer, the shadows shifting. "The old man was trying to help her. He knows. You have to take her back, or it will find you." "Find me?" I didn't fully understand, but dread pooled in my stomach. "What exactly is after us?" The woman's expression shifted. Her fear morphed into something else. Anger? Defiance? "We are not going back," she said sharply. "That will only make things worse." "Do you have any idea what you're dealing with?" the figure pressed. "It's not just a threat, it's a force that—" "Stop!" she shouted. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. "Enough!" She turned to me, her sunglasses reflecting the dim light. "Drive, we have to move." With my heart racing, I put the car in drive, but as I pulled away, the figure lunged, fingers reaching toward me. I barely missed it, the window rattling as I sped off into the fog. "I can't believe this is happening," I muttered, gripping the wheel. "What did we get ourselves into?" "We're being hunted," she said, her voice low and steady, "and it knows we're out here." A chill crawled up my spine. I drove faster, each passing street lamp barely illuminating the way ahead. As I glanced at her, I saw her eyes darting nervously, scanning for danger that wasn't immediately visible. "Tell me what I need to know," I urged, wanting facts, wanting control. "How do we stop it?" She hesitated, and in that moment it hit me with the force of a freight train, the overwhelming need to find safety. But as I turned onto a quieter street, I knew we were far from secure. Then everything changed. A loud bang echoed behind us, like a gunshot. I jerked in my seat, adrenaline spiking. The woman gasped, her grip tightening on the door. "That wasn't just a warning!" she shrieked, and I could hear the panic rising in her voice. I made a split-second decision, glancing towards a narrow alleyway. My instincts screamed at me to take the chance. "Hold on," I shouted, swerving the car toward the darkness and into the unknown. The alley swallowed us whole, the darkness wrapping around the car like a heavy blanket. I glanced at the rearview mirror, expecting to see the hooded figure following close behind. Instead, there was nothing, only the thick fog clinging to the edges of our fading headlights. "Go faster," the woman cried, her voice cutting through the silence. It pulled me back to reality. I pressed the accelerator harder, and the car jumped forward, tires skidding against loose gravel. "Where are we going?" I shouted over the engine's roar, my mind racing. "I don't know," she yelled back, fear stark in her voice. "Just get us away from here." As we zipped deeper into the alley, I could feel her gaze flicking to the sides, searching for shadows, for a sign that we were safe. The tension in the car thickened, making it hard to breathe. My focus was entirely on the path ahead, but the unease crawling up my spine wouldn't let me forget the figure we left behind. Suddenly, the road opened up into a small parking lot, lights glowing dimly in the mist. I pulled in, skidding to a stop. The woman looked out the window, her eyes wide, and I followed her gaze. There was nothing behind us, but the stillness felt wrong. "We can't stay here," she said, her voice more urgent now. "It'll find us." "Find us?" I echoed, bewildered. "But I thought we lost it." "It tracks through fear." Her eyes searched mine. "We have to keep moving. It feeds off our fear." My stomach nodded. "So what do we do?" "Back streets are best. Stick to shadows. But we can't keep driving aimlessly. We need a plan." Before I could respond, a noise pierced the silence. A low, unnatural growl that seemed to emanate from the depths of the fog. My hands froze. On the wheel. "What was that?" I whispered, my voice barely escaping my lips. "Get out," she said, the panic surging back into her voice. "We can't be in the car." I leaped out, heart pounding in my chest, the cold air engulfing me. The woman followed, glancing around, as if expecting something to leap from the shadows any moment. A part of me wanted to grab her and just run, but the fog was already distorting my sense of direction. "Over here," she shouted, pointing toward a dilapidated building on the edge of the lot. We sprinted toward it, the eerie growls growing closer, the fear in her eyes igniting my own. We ducked inside, the door creaking as we shoved it closed behind us. The darkness was suffocating, and I felt her trembling beside me. "Do you have any idea where we are?" I asked, trying to catch my breath. "What's this place?" "No idea," she admitted, but I could see her resolve hardening. "But we'll figure it out. We have to." In the quiet, the growling faded, but the tension remained. Then, without warning, a loud crash echoed from outside. The door rattled in its frame. I gasped, my heart racing anew. "Someone's out there," I said. "Shh," she whispered, her eyes wide and alert. "We can't panic now." We pressed our backs against the wall, straining to listen. That's when I saw it. A shadow slipping past a cracked window, moving far too smoothly for comfort. Fear clawed at my throat as I turned to the woman. "What do we do now?" She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze was fixed on the window, as the growl returned, louder and more menacing. I needed to know what was beyond that door, but at that moment, I realized we were nowhere close to being safe. The growl intensified, vibrating through the walls of the building. I held my breath, hoping it would just fade away. But then came the sound of heavy footsteps outside, slow and deliberate, as if something was pacing, waiting. "I can't stay here," I whispered. I felt the woman's grip on my arm tighten. "We have to wait it out," she said, her eyes darting around the dim room. "If we move, it might sense us." In the shadows, the outlines of broken furniture emerged, pieces of a long-forgotten world. A faded couch slumped against one wall, and on the floor lay remnants of shattered glass. The air was stale, heavy with dust. I noticed a staircase at the far end, spiraling upwards into darkness. "I don't want to just sit here," I said. "What if it decides to come in?" She glanced back at the door, then at the staircase. "We could go up. It might give us a better view. If we can see it, maybe we can figure out how to escape." The growling was still there, but the footsteps had stopped. I nodded, unsure, but desperate for a plan. We both moved toward the staircase, our hearts pounding in time with our quiet footsteps. With each step, my trepidation grew. What awaited us up there? We reached the top, and I peeked over the banister. The fog outside was thick, curling around the building like an unwelcoming embrace. Straining my ears, I didn't hear the growl anymore. Instead, silence filled the air, like the calm before a storm. "What now?" she whispered beside me. I scanned the upper floor, my pulse quickening. "We could find a window," I murmured. "Maybe we can climb out on the other side." But as I stepped forward, I spotted something glinting in the dim light. A set of keys lying against the wall, almost too pristine for such a dilapidated place. I picked them up, turning them over in my palm. "It could be for a car," I said, suddenly hopeful, "or something else we could use to defend ourselves." Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from below, and I jumped, the keys clattering to the ground. "What was that?" I gasped. "Let's go," she urged, grabbing my arm. "We need to move now." As we rushed back to the staircase, I heard a voice, a whisper threaded with malice. "You can't hide from me." My heart dropped. The growl returned, a deep rumble that reverberated through the floorboards. "It's in the building," I breathed, panic rising. "Run!" she yelled, and we bolted down the stairs, adrenaline kicking in. But with each step, the growl grew louder, echoing through the empty hallways below. Something sinister was closing in on us. At the bottom, we had only one choice: out the door, or out into the fog, where it lurked unseen. I grabbed the handle. Our only way out waited, but it meant plunging back into the unknown. As soon as I turned the knob, cold air seeped in, swirling the fog around us. We hesitated for a moment, caught between the safety of the building and the fear of whatever prowled outside. I glanced back at her, and she nodded, her expression grave. In a flash, we stepped through the doorway into the embrace of the fog. An unsettling chill swept over me, making every hair on my body stand on end. The air felt alive, heavy with unspoken threats. I took a deep breath and scanned our surroundings. The street ahead was shrouded, but I could barely make out the outlines of abandoned cars parked haphazardly along the curb. Suddenly, a noise pierced the quiet. A low snarl came from just beyond the fog, close enough that I felt my breath catch in my throat. "What is that?" I stammered, eyes wide with panic. "I don't know," she said, her voice shaking. "We need to keep moving." We edged forward, our bodies tense and every step cautious. I scanned the area, but everything seemed to blend into a gray haze. The growl morphed into a menacing growl, each sound deeper than the last, the rumble vibrating through the pavement beneath my feet. Anxiety gnawed at my stomach like a ravenous beast. Then, up ahead, something shifted in the shadows. I froze. "Did you see that?" I whispered, barely able to form the words. She squinted into the fog, her brow furrowed. "I think so." Before I could respond, a figure emerged, flickering between visibility and shadows like a cruel illusion. It was tall, far taller than any human should be, with eyes glinting like molten gold. My heart hammered against my ribs. This couldn't be real. I think it's looking at us," I murmured. "Run!" she screamed, breaking the paralysis. We dashed to the left, weaving around a car, its once bright paint now faded and peeling. The growl escalated, shifting from a warning to a furious roar. I surged forward, adrenaline spiking through my veins, but fear crashed over me like a wave. "Where are we going?" I yelled, glancing back to see the figure staying parallel to us, gracefully maneuvering through the fog. "To the alley!" she shouted, pointing ahead. We plunged into the narrow passageway between two buildings. The stench of decay seeped in, and I choked on the foul air. The growl faded, swallowed up by the walls around us. "Keep going," she urged. "We can make it to the street on the other side." As we sprinted deeper into the alley, I wanted to believe her, but my mind raced with doubt. What if this was a trap? What if we were running right into the jaws of our pursuer? Just then, we skidded to a halt. A wall of crates blocked our exit. My heart sank. Behind us, the growl returned, louder and closer than ever. "Now what?" I gasped, my thoughts spinning. That's when I saw it. A glimmer of metal protruding from a pile of discarded boxes. It looked like a pipe. Perhaps it could be our only weapon against whatever was hunting us. I reached for it, just as the growling stopped, replaced by the sound of heavy breathing. We weren't alone anymore. The air thickened, and an uneasy silence wrapped around us, pressing in from all sides. I gripped the metal pipe, the coldness of it grounding me momentarily. My heart thundered, each beat louder than the last. I exchanged a quick glance with her, a silent realization passing between us. We had to be ready for anything. Then, from the shadows, a shape stepped forward. It was different, far different from the tall figure chasing us. This one was smaller, almost hunched, its eyes shining with a hungry glimmer instead of that molten glow. It let out a low, throaty growl, and I instinctively raised the pipe, my knuckles white around it. "What is that?" she whispered, fear etched across her features. Before I could answer, the creature lunged. I swung the pipe instinctively, connecting with a dull thud. It yelped, staggered back, and I felt a fleeting sense of triumph. But it didn't take long for the creature to shake off the impact. It snapped its jaws, a flash of sharp teeth visible under the fog's murky shade. "Keep moving!" I shouted, pushing past her, urgency driving me forward. We backtracked briefly, trying to find another way out. The alley twisted and turned, but the creature followed, its growls filling the narrow space, echoing off the walls. I was desperate for an escape. We turned a sharp corner, and I caught sight of a metal door half obscured by a tangle of weeds and debris. "There!" I pointed, my voice tight with hope. We dashed toward it, fumbling at the rusty handle. Locked. "Damn it!" I spat, shaking it. But before I could process what to do next, the creature was upon us again, its growls intertwined with our desperate breaths. "Here!" she cried, pulling me away. She led me to a narrow opening between two crumbling bricks. We squeezed through just as the creature barreled past, narrowly missing us. Adrenaline surged, but the moment we were free, nerves kicked back in. On the other side, we stumbled into a small courtyard, remnants of a once bustling area. Broken chairs and shattered glass littered the ground. My mind raced. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. "Wait," she said, her eyes scanning our new surroundings. "We can't just stand here." Just then, footsteps echoed from the alley we had just escaped. The low growl transformed into a series of angry barks. There were more of them. "We can't go back," I said, my throat dry. "They'll catch us." Then we need to find a way over that fence. She pointed to a tall wooden barrier nearby. It looked rickety, but we didn't have time. We raced over, scrambling up the rough surface. My feet slipped more than once, but she was there, pulling me up. We barely made it over, just as the creatures poured into the courtyard. Barks grew louder, a discord of chaos. As we landed on the other side, I caught my breath and turned to see the creatures stretching their necks, sniffing at the air, their golden eyes locked onto us. I took a deep breath, panic setting in again. Where do we go now? She glanced around, desperation creeping in. There, she pointed down another alley. We have to hurry. Before we could move, a chilling howl erupted from deeper within the fog, sending another jolt of pure fear through me. Whatever was out there was not done yet. "Run!" I yelled, and we took off into the unknown, leaving the horrors behind, but knowing they wouldn't stop chasing us. We sprinted down the narrow alley, the sound of our footsteps swallowed by the dense fog. Panic clawed at my throat as the howling echoed behind us, accompanied by the relentless growls of the creatures. I focused on the path ahead, frantically scanning for any potential escape routes. The alley twisted sharply, and just as I turned the corner, I nearly collided with a wall. I skid to a stop and cursed under my breath. "Which way now?" I gasped, my heart racing. Sweat dripped down my back, mixing with the cold air that felt too thick to breathe. She was beside me, her eyes wide with fear. "What about that door?" She pointed ahead to a shadowed opening that looked like it belonged to an abandoned warehouse. It was barely visible in the murky darkness, but it felt like our only option. "Let's go!" I shouted, making a beeline for it. We reached the door, and I pushed against it, finding it ajar. I stepped inside, pulling her along, just as I heard the creature's barks getting closer. The musty smell hit us like a wall. Inside, the space was filled with old crates and rusted machinery, all cloaked in shadows. I glanced around, looking for a place to hide. "Quick!" I urged, moving deeper into the warehouse. We ducked behind a stack of crates, their rough surfaces scraping against my palms. I held my breath, listening. The growls echoed louder, now accompanied by skittering sounds over the concrete floor. I looked at her, eyes wide and full of unshed tears. "Do you think they saw us?" she breathed, clutching my arm. "I don't know," I whispered back, fear creeping in. I could feel the tension in the air, making my skin prickle. The last thing I wanted was to find out what those creatures could do if they got close. Then, as if answering my thoughts, a loud crash erupted from the entrance. The door fell open, splintering wood scattering across the floor. The creatures burst through, fur bristling, eyes wild with hunger. My heart sank as the first one caught sight of us, its glowing gaze fixed on our hiding spot. "Stay quiet," I whispered, pressing against the crates as the creature sniffed the air. I felt her tremble beside me. I couldn't blame her. I was as scared as she was. Seconds felt like hours as we watched, holding our breath. Just then, a loud rumble resonated through the building, vibrations shaking the floor beneath us. A flicker of light broke through the darkness, and I realized it was coming from an open hatch on the far side of the room. "Look!" I pointed, hope surging in me. "We have to reach that hatch!" Before I could formulate a plan, the lead creature lunged forward, nostrils flaring as it caught our scent. Panic surged through me, and I grabbed her hand. "Now, run!" We bolted from our hiding spot, adrenaline spurring our legs forward. I could hear the sound of claws on concrete behind us, urging us onward. We sprinted toward the hatch, the sliver of light growing bigger with each step. Heavy breaths and growls filled the air. But just as we got close, the ground shook again, causing me to stumble. I nearly lost my footing, glancing back to see the creatures closing in fast. We were so close. My mind screamed at me to move faster. Then, everything went dark. A deafening roar chased away the dim light, making the walls rattle. The darkness swallowed us whole, and I felt her grip slide from my hand. I blinked, trying to adjust, but the blackness pressed in, suffocating. I couldn't hear her anymore. "Where are you?" I called out, my voice swallowed by the void. But the only response was silence and the distant sound of claws scraping closer. I stumbled forward, disoriented and scared. I could barely see, but I could still feel the chill of the concrete on my skin. I groped around, searching for any sign of her, but the darkness was oppressive. "Can you hear me?" I shouted, hoping my voice would reach her. But only silence and the distant sound of claws scraping closer. I stumbled forward, disoriented and scared. I could barely see, but I could still feel the chill of the concrete on my skin. I groped around, searching for any sign of her, but the darkness was oppressive. "Can you hear me?" I shouted, hoping my voice would reach her. But only silence greeted me. Panic clawed at my chest, and I turned in a slow circle, listening for any sign of movement. Suddenly, a soft whimper broke the stillness. "Over here!" It was her voice, faint but distinct. Relief washed over me. "I'm stuck!" I hurried toward her voice, my hands outstretched. "Where are you?" I called back, staying focused on the sound. "I can't see. I think I fell," she responded, her voice shaking with fear. Just as I reached her, I felt a cold gust of air brush past my face, raising the hairs on my neck. My heart raced again. This place felt wrong, like something was coming. "Stay still, I'll help you," I said, reaching down. My fingers fumbled, finding her hand. She grasped it tight, and I pulled her toward me. I pulled her trembling. "I think something's in here with us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My stomach lurched. I concentrated on the direction of the hatch. We had to go back that way. After a few moments, we got our bearings. I led her back, cautious with each step. But as we moved, the scratching noises grew louder, echoing off the walls. Whatever it was close. I turned to her, my breath hitching. "We need to hurry," I urged, fear creeping into my voice. We picked up the pace, moving towards the faint glow of light we could barely see. It flickered like a distant, dying star. But then an unearthly growl rumbled through the air, reverberating like thunder. I froze, my heart pounding in my throat. "What was that?" I whispered, gripping her hand tighter. Before she could respond, the source of the sound emerged from the shadows. A hulking figure, tall and covered in matted fur, its eyes glinting like shards of glass, stepped into the light. It seemed to be blocking our escape. "Run!" I shouted, pulling her along as adrenaline shot through my veins. We dashed towards the hatch, desperation fueling our movements. The creature lunged after us, its claws scraping the ground. I could hear it breathing behind us, hot and heavy. The hatch was now within arm's reach. I pushed against the door, and it opened under the pressure, spilling light into our world of despair. I tugged her through just as I heard the creature scream, a sound that shook the very walls. We tumbled out of the hatch onto grass, breathless. But as I looked around, my heart sank. This wasn't the street or the back alley we'd entered. We were in an unfamiliar woods, surrounded by towering trees and a full moon casting shadows across the ground. "What just happened?" she gasped, looking around, her eyes wide with confusion. I shook my head, still trying to process the harrowing escape. But then a rustle in the bushes caught my attention. I felt a chill run down my spine. Something, or someone, was out there. I scanned the darkness, fear coiling tightly inside me as the sound of heavy breathing returned. "We need to move," I said, pulling her close. "We are definitely not alone." And that's when I heard it. A low, guttural growl that sent chills through my bones. We were in even deeper trouble than I thought. The forest loomed around us, an unfamiliar maze of shadows and tall trees. Panic surged as the growl echoed again, closer this time, sending me scrambling for direction. "We need to get out of here," I murmured, grappling with the horror we had just escaped. She glanced at me, fear etched on her face. "What do we do?" Her voice trembled, barely breaking the silence of the woods as the growl came again, this time accompanied by the telltale sound of rustling branches. "Just stay close to me," I said, trying to channel calmness I didn't feel. I grabbed her hand tightly, and we moved deeper into the woods, hearts racing as adrenaline coursed through us. With each cautious step, the shadows seemed alive, flickering in the corner of my vision, feeding off our fear. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being hunted again, that the same dread that followed us in the city was surfacing in this dark place. "I don't know how we got here," she said, breathless. "It doesn't make sense." Without realizing it, I had been fighting back my own spiraling thoughts, but they crashed in like a wave. How could we end up in a completely different location? Had we crossed into another realm through that hatch? Or was it all some twisted hallucination? I bit the inside of my cheek, focusing on the path ahead. A sudden snap of a twig echoed through the silence, making us both freeze. I could see it ahead, a flicker of movement weaving between the trees. My heart raced. We had to keep moving, or we would be caught. "Run," I hissed, pulling her along as we darted forward, dodging branches that whipped against our skin. It felt like we were trapped in a nightmare, every step taking us further from the safety we had been desperate to find. Yet we pressed on, urgency pushing us. We stumbled into a clearing, moonlight spilling down and revealing an ancient stone structure. It looked like a long-forgotten altar of sorts, draped in ivy and shadows. I could feel it pulling me closer, a sense of destiny weaving through my veins. "Should we hide?" she asked, glancing nervously back at the darkness behind us. "Maybe," I said slowly, letting go of her hand and moving closer to the altar. "It looks sturdy. We could defend ourselves if whatever that thing is finds us." We crouched behind the weather-worn stones, and for a moment the growls faded into an ominous silence, leaving only the sound of our shared breaths. "What if it finds us here?" she whispered, eyes scanning the shadows. "I don't know," I admitted, unease twisting in my stomach. Somewhere in my mind, a nagging thought lingered. Was this altar significant? Was it linked to whatever hunted us? Or could it offer us protection? My thoughts were interrupted by a low voice, barely audible but unmistakable, picking its way through the trees. "You shouldn't have come here. Why did you leave the path?" The words sent a chill down my spine, and my heart pounded. "What was that?" I hissed. "I don't know," she breathed, squeezing her eyes shut, like shielding herself would help. Suddenly, from the tree line, a figure emerged, a person. Their silhouette was dark against the moonlight, but it was just as tall as the creature we had seen earlier. "Stay down," I whispered sharply, clutching her arm as I instinctively backed against the stones. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but the figure stepped forward, revealing a gaunt face, lined with years of weariness. It didn't seem to be a threat. "You shouldn't be here," the voice echoed, calm yet laced with urgency. "You awakened something." "Who are you?" I shot back. "What do you mean?" But before he could respond, the growling returned, louder and more menacing, rumbling from the forest as a pair of golden eyes flickered in the dark undergrowth. "Run!" the man shouted, suddenly alert to the danger, and I grabbed her hand again. Fleeing in the opposite direction, we darted through the trees. My heart raced as branches clawed at my arms and legs, tearing at the fabric of my panic-laden thoughts. "Where do we go?" she gasped, her breath warm against the cold night air. "I don't know," I managed, feeling completely disoriented. But as we ran, something shifted inside me. I needed to find an answer. The growls intensified, bestial and resonant, thundering closer. A part of me wanted to turn back, confront whatever lay behind us, but fear chased my feet forward into the haze. Then, as I ran, I caught sight of the same altar, the stone altar that had felt sacred just moments ago, looming in the distance. But it was too close to the approaching threat. "The altar!" I shouted, pulling her back. "We can use it." "Are you crazy?" she yelled, pulling at my arm, but I could feel a strange energy surrounding that place, like it held some kind of power. She hesitated, then reluctantly followed me as we sprinted for the stones, praying for safety as the creature charged forward, furious and unstoppable. As we reached the altar, the world around us seemed to blur, the darkness deepening as shadows encircled us, almost protective. I had no idea how it worked, or even if it would protect us, but I clasped her hand tightly, hoping against hope. "Whatever you are, we won't back down," I yelled into the darkness, my voice shaky but rising against the fear. "You can't control us." But the growl didn't fade. It grew even louder, filling every corner of the night around us. In that moment, I didn't know if we had chosen wrong, or if we were about to uncover the truth. The darkness thickened, and I knew the answer was just beyond the shadows, waiting to reveal itself. But what would it show us? Would we escape, or would our fear feed it, drawing us into the web of gloom and nightmare? Even in that moment, the questions lingered, indeterminate and haunting. No certainty would come, just the weight of the unknown pressing in around us as we prepared to face whatever terror awaited. I glanced at her, and though we were terrified, there was strength in our grip. This wasn't the end of fleeing, it was a beginning of facing what we had tangled ourselves in. Now, we just had to see how it would unfold.